It's Wednesday night. It's 7 o'clock. That means it's time for Upon Further Review here with my friend, Eric Dutkiewecz. And we're going to spend the next hour talking a little bit of Summit Athletic Conference football, as well as some of the other popular games in the area, as there was about 3 or 4 games Friday night that is worthy of our attention. And we had the opportunity to go out to my old stomping grounds Friday night with the crew and cover the Snider versus Carroll game. And we were treated to a great game. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But welcome. Thank you for coming and watching us tonight, wherever that may be from. If you could do us a favor on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It'll help us out a lot. And on the other platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, give us a follow and also share it with your friends. Tonight, we're going to have a great little show up here for you tonight. We're going to bring on 2 of the area top players from the Northeast Indiana corner of football. One of them being Stratton Fuller, the junior wideout from Columbia City, who has really come on the scene here after last year's performance, and it's just continued for Stratton. Being that I am a Columbia City resident, it's good to see the young man having success, because I know that he has put in the work in the offseason. And we're also going to bring on Brandon Logan, commit to the Vandy boys down at Vanderbilt, and maybe I'll give him a couple suggestions on about his future playing college football there, Doot. But yeah, I guess you could say Friday night we were treated to some really good football games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we probably were out at the game of the year between Snider and Carroll with big implications in the SAC there. Certainly, Snider pulling out a squeaker 27-24. And we talked about, Brandon Logan coming on the show in just a little bit. I mean, a huge night for him. 2 pick sixes in the game, 10 tackles. The kid was all over the field and really has become a bright spot there. And that was one of just a number of games that you touched on. And the SAC, that was a big one. Homestead and Dwenger, another big one in the SAC. And then, in the NE8, we had Leo and Columbia City. That one went down to the wire. And then in the ACAC, the one we talked about really all week long was Adams Central and Heritage. And Adams Central, dominant fashion once again for the Flying Jets, handling Heritage 38-0. So a lot of great football in the area. Those were kind of the 3 headline games. We saw great performances from Columbia City again. We'll talk to Stratton Fuller later in just a few minutes. We saw, New Haven roll again. We saw, Lures undefeated in the SAC, still in the contention for. So there was a lot of great games out there on Friday night, and that's what makes this show fun, is that we can break things down from the week before, and we look ahead to this upcoming Friday night.
Well, yeah, and you said, the Heritage game was a little bit of surprise based upon what we had known from the last couple of weeks of input. But Casey Colquhoun, who was on our show last week, had said that if they don't stop the run against Adams Central, that it was going to be an uphill battle playing the Jets on Friday night. And I think that came to fruition as the Jets really rolled in that ball game. And then, of course, like you said, Bishop Lures, what can you say about the Lures keep rolling? I mean, here's a team that doesn't play Carroll or Snider because of the way the schedule is set up. And if they would run the table, now they have to get by some teams, especially Homestead, that last week, but they could go in that last week, maybe spoiling some things in the Summit Athletic Conference, because they could ultimately also be undefeated if Snider would run the table. So we're going to have to wait and see on what all happens here over the next week. We're going to come back to some of these games, especially the game that we're at here in about in our latter segments. But I think it's important now. We're going to bring on the young man from Columbia City High School who's been on a tear of late. There he is, Mr. Stratton Fuller. Stratton, can you hear us?
Yep. Thanks for having me on.
There we go. We got all the we've been having audio problems. Old man,
we hear you loud and clear.
figure out technology on our end, we probably needed one of you youngins to come over here and teach us how it's done. But Stratton, I know that you've had a whirlwind of 2 years. You've kind of gone from a guy that was a young sophomore, no one knew much about, to really coming on the scene and having a great year last year, not just as a wide receiver, but as a DB. I mean, you had some key interceptions. I think you had a blocked field goal attempt. I think that was the New Haven game last year that helped seal that game for you guys. Let's talk a little bit here about the season thus far. Give us a little bit more insight into what the Columbia City Eagles have been up to.
Yeah. So you guys know we're 5-0, and our schedule gets tougher as it goes. So we gotta prepare for that. We know that as a team. I think the biggest part of our success is our young linemen. I mean, they've stepped in a role that I don't think they even knew that they would do. I mean, we got younger guys. Tucker Reed's our center. Sam Bean, he's one of our guards, and they have both been really good linemen this year, and they've stepped in really well, and that's allowed us to have some big rushing games. So like when teams plot try to take me out, it doesn't affect us because our run game, they allow it to open up, and our other two linemen, our seniors, Joel Yeager, Ian Schumann, and Landon Tim, they do a great job as well. So that group is really one of the biggest factors that leads to our success. So yeah, you take me away, our run game opens up, and then our backs are some playmakers. They're some good backs.
Yeah, you made some a couple nice comments there about your guys' running game this year, and it really has kind of been that way even last year, because you guys would run the football. We covered your game at Norwell last year. Was a phenomenal football game. It's been a year where you've had some, multiple guys already over 100 yards on rushing this year. And then, of course, you've touched the ball a few times. Have you gotten enough touches running it on like the speed sweep stuff, or were you going to have to call the coach up and put a little word in for you to maybe have you carry the ball here and there since you do everything else?
Yeah, I've been getting some more looks running the ball as well. Last game, I actually had a rushing touchdown, so don't know if we'll see more of it, but maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll see.
Hey, Doot, did you know this? He also punts, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
He's got a clip that I saw, and I'll show it here in a little bit if I can find it. But he had a fake punt, I think, against Huntington North, if my memory serves me correctly. But
yeah,
we've seen a couple guys do that, line up to punt and, punt it every now and then, but all of a sudden take it down and run it as well. So he's not just a wide receiver DB, he's also a specialist. So he's a little well-rounded there, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Stratton, talk about that well-rounded game. I mean, the ability to play offense and defense, to make plays on both sides. Columbia City, a 4A school, but still relies on a lot of guys playing both ways. What's that like for you in preparation each week to play on both sides of the ball? And really, how has that helped kind of your stature as a football player and getting noticed as you kind of go through the recruitment process as well, of just the ability to play on both sides of the ball?
I'll talk about that. But first, Shannon, I'm not going to lie, I'm not a great punter. But they put me back there for the threat of running. I'm not going to lie. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to playing both ways, see, I'm more of an offensive guy personally. I enjoy offense more, but defense does help recruitment. My dad, he talks a lot about that to me. Defense helps. I mean, if I can do what I can do at receiver, but then if I have to guard their best players well, it shows that I'm capable of playing on the field wherever coaches need me. So when recruiting, it helps get me looks. Just I can be on the field anywhere you need me to. And then it allows – I mean, it helps our team. I mean, we need our athletes to play and it help in any way they can. So my role on the team is to do both, and I try to – I mean, I take as much time on defense as I do offense now. I've really embraced the defensive role. At first, I wasn't really into it, but now I've really embraced trying to be my best on the defensive side as well.
Well, we got some video of you running up and running here. One thing that I think you do a pretty good job of, Stratton, and going back to my days coaching quarterbacks and receivers when I was at Ball State, and then most of my coaching career, I think you do a pretty good job of what I call high pointing the ball. When you get in a jump ball situation, you're really good about getting yourself in position, like right there when you stack that DB and put yourself in a position to make a play, as well as your technique running routes. Talk about some of the things that maybe you've done this year to help you become a better route runner.
Definitely when it comes to route running, I want to thank Dre Muhammad at Traction App. He has poured a lot of time into me, and I spent a lot of my summer over there this year, and that I think really elevated my game to the height that it really allows me to just get better. I mean, he's done a lot for me, and everybody at Traction App has done a lot for me. Nakia, Ty, Dre, they've all helped me a lot. And then my dad, he's also our receiver coach, so he's helped me. We do drills all the time. And when it comes to high pointing the football, I mean, he engraved that in my head at an early age, so can't really forget that.
What's it like playing for your dad? As a wide receiver, he's a wide receiver coach. Talk about how special that is, that dynamic to have your dad as your position coach in at the high school level.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. Most kids, they probably wouldn't want their dad to be the coach, and sometimes it can, kind of get annoying. But I think it's a good thing because I respect him as a coach in practices and games, but I can also talk to him on the sideline like a dad, and he can give me advice, and he'd give me advice and just help me as a player and as a son as well.
Sure. They talked a lot about the turnover for Columbia City. You guys won the NE8 a year ago and got to regionals and graduated a lot, returned some players, new quarterback in Gradbury. You guys have really been able to kind of find that 1-2 punch, if you will. Talk about just overall Columbia City's success in the last couple of years, really how you guys have been able to turn that corner and find that success. And really for you, continuing that success. Now you're just still a junior. You've got a couple years left with the Eagles.
Yeah. So for a while, and even my freshman year, we were kind of always just pretty mediocre, like a 5-win team every year. My freshman year was actually the first time that we won the first round of sectionals in like 10 years. So I believe that was kind of one of the first steps that we took. And then the year after that, that was the year that we exploded for 11 wins. So that was obviously the turning point year. But I think what allowed us to get there is people bought into our system. It was new. It was our second year doing our flex bone style. And I think our linemen really grasped it and they understood it and they wanted to learn it. And I mean, we had some dogs too. I'm not going to lie. Our defense was really good. Our linebackers, all three of them, Ethan Sievers, Justice Gorey, 4 of them, Justice Gorey, Dominic Chacon, and Josh Arntz, they were all just they were tackle machines that get tackles anytime. And we had a lot of good players, but we also had players that bought in and they listened to the coaches and they did their assignment near perfectly every time.
Well, as we'll get back here a little bit, but wanted to also discuss with you some of the recruiting picture for you this year. I think you've already received, if my memory is correct, an offer from Eastern Michigan. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that is true. Yep.
Okay. No, Coach Creighton, he's a very good coach and a very good person. So if that's where you choose to go here in another year, you're going to be in great hands. Tell me a little bit more about what are some other things you're seeing in the recruiting arena for yourself.
Position wise, I probably would be seen as a slot receiver. You know, I'm not super tall or anything. I'm not 6'2", 6'3". I'm a 5'10", 5'11". So I'll be seen as a slot, and I think I can help teams in that slot role really well. I've been in communication with a few Macs, one in particular. I'll be visiting this weekend in Toledo, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
What about my alma mater and where I coached for 8 years and won 2 championships, the Ball State Cardinals?
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't heard much from them yet.
Well,
We'll
that
see
may
if
change.
yeah. We'll see.
What's the
We'll see.
feedback? Yeah, what's the feedback? What have you taken away from the process that will help you as a football player this year and into your senior year and really, you know, as you talk to these coaches and go to these camps and make these visits, what has that experience been like for you to take away as a football player?
Yeah, one thing I've really started to understand through like recruiting and how it's done is that stats ultimately aren't the deciding factor. Like I always was worried about getting stats and how that would affect my recruiting, but film is what they prioritize. So if your film's good, they're going to offer you based on film. No one's ever gotten a scholarship off stats, so
Or highlights.
that's how I look at it now. Yeah.
Or highlights. There's a lot of guys out there. Look, here's what I would tell you when I was a recruiter. It's not bad to throw highlights on a full game, your best game, because that at least gives them a microcosm of your abilities. Because I've never seen a highlight that somebody looked bad in, right?
Yeah.
Everybody looks good in a highlight. But those games that you have on film are going to be the games that guys and coaches are going to evaluate on outside of maybe watching you play in person. But you've got enough good game film out there that, you know, I think you're a well-rounded pro football player that is going to garner interest just from the standpoint of what you've got on film, irregardless of who you play each and every Friday night. I mean, my gosh, you got Mylan Graham going to Ohio State. He's an NAA player, and there's other players that are going to have opportunities. So I'm glad to hear that your mindset is such that you only can control so much, but you really can control what you put on tape, and that's how you play. And I've never seen you take a play off. I've always seen you as the guy that's always up tempo, motor runs high, either side of the ball. So from an observational standpoint, from a guy that used to do it from the outside, just keep doing what you're doing, and whatever happens will happen, because you've already got one offer. That's all it takes, man. You know, it only takes one. I mean, it doesn't matter if you got 50. It still takes one to get yourself in the front door. Last thing here, then we're going to let you go because I'm sure you got studying to do since school's tomorrow. But looking at your team this year compared to last year, is there a big difference in your mind between the two?
The biggest difference that is pretty obvious in just watching us is size-wise up front and just all around. We are smaller, but I believe that we are faster. We are faster. Like our offensive line, there's some fast guys. I'm not gonna lie. So they may not be as big as last year's group, but they are definitely fast. They are faster for sure. And I think they know their assignments just as well. So, and then when it comes to our defense, we have our secondary, Ian Stahl and Cohen Payne, we're all back. So our secondary is looking pretty good. And up front, defensive line as well, we're smaller, but those guys, they are really starting to understand what to do and how to do their job well. So assignment-wise and knowing like IQ of the game, I think we're even better than last year. But size-wise is definitely the biggest difference. But heart and motive is definitely we're better this year, I think.
Well, Stratton, we appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your time. I'm glad you were able to join us here tonight, and you know, tell Coach that we all say hello from here upon further review. He's been on a couple times, and best of luck to you and the Eagles
Thank
as
you.
a whole as you get down the stretch here, and as to your father as well. Enjoy these last couple weeks, because even though you're a junior, the senior year is going to go just as fast.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
And that's Stratton Fuller, the wide receiver, DB, Columbia City High School. Just a top-notch kid, as you can see there. Very well spoken, articulate dude. He's a kid that's, he's got a lot of upside both on and off the field, I think. And I just think that as time progresses here, we're going to see even more and more interest in him.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the cool things, since I've joined the pregame show with you guys, this is our third season together, second year for Upon for the Review, is the name of somebody like Stratton Fuller, who's come down the pipe and really made a name for himself outside of the city of Fort Wayne, outside of the SAC. One of the many kids that have been able to do that, and like only a junior. I mean, he really came on the scene as a sophomore for a Columbia City team that wins their first NE8 title. They get to the sectional championship, first time I think since 1993, and you live there. Columbia City was a buzz, and I think Stratton Fuller is kind of the straw that stirs the drink, if you will, for that Columbia City Eagles team. And with Brett Fox as their coach, and with all the pieces that they lost to graduation, to come back now 5-0 again, number 6 in Class 4A, 48.8 points per game. This Columbia City team, which is third in the entire state. And number 1, I looked it up, third in the entire state, number 1 for teams in 3A, 4A, and 5A, and 6A. So if you take everybody outside of Class 1A and 2A, Columbia City scoring the most in the state. 10 seasons for Brett Fox as coach there. And they're just rolling. And a big one this weekend with New Haven at New Haven. We were there a few weeks ago. We know the power that the Bulldogs have. That's going to be a great one out there this weekend in the NE8, which could, there again, be the NE8 championship, Coach.
Right. And you got the matchup against Mylan Graham, and, Columbia City has had his number the last, or I shouldn't say has had Mylan's number, New Haven's number the last couple years, not only in the season, but in the playoffs. So these two teams, New Haven, that's going to be a pretty packed house come Friday night, because Columbia City travels well. New Haven will have a big turnout, be a fun game to be at. I'll say that much. And, here's the other thing. Bradbury, the quarterback's only a junior, completing about 60% of his passes. They've gotten by just running it. They just really haven't had to drop back solely and throw it all the time. But that doesn't mean they can't do it. So why don't you take the lead here, and let's bring on Mr. Vandy Boy.
So
because I want to talk to this young man.
So we've talked about it. We've had a busy show tonight with 2 junior star air players. We had Stratton Fuller from Columbia City. Now we're going to move to probably the talk of the town, Coach, for his performance from the SAC a week ago. And he's joining us via phone tonight because he's on the road. He's had a busy weekend, but we have Brandon Logan from Snider High School. And Brandon, if you can hear us and turn on your mic, thanks first of all for joining us tonight. Just talk about this last week for you. The big game on Friday night, Snider pulls out the win, and your ability, the 2 pick sixes. Just talk about what Friday night was like for you, and really the days since.
Yeah, Friday it was awesome. It was probably one of the top 3 games, I mean, like atmosphere wise, I've ever played in. Obviously we got the win against a really good 6A team, Carroll. It was the Indiana game of the week. But yeah, we made a few more plays than they did in the end of it, and we just got the win. The pick sixes were, so the first one was just easier because the ball was kind of right to me, and I had Landon in front of me to get the blocker. But the second one was the end of the half, and when he throws the ball, there's 0 seconds on the clock. And as I'm going back, as I'm getting the ball, I know there's 0 seconds on the clock. So I'm returning, and I know, like, even if I get tackled at the 1, it doesn't matter because the offense can't do anything because the half is over. So I'm thinking in my mind while I'm running, I have to score. and that's what I did, and it was a huge momentum changer. And I think that, I mean, obviously it really helped us.
Yeah, we're seeing a clip of it right now that we were able to get from, I believe, a ground cam, but you look like you were about to run out of gas there about the 3 because you had run not
Yeah.
only, I mean, I know it went down
Yeah,
as
I
an
was
80
I
yarder,
was
but you probably ran
tired, like
about 100. Yeah, you must have ran about 110 yards on that
yeah,
one.
like when I was running, I mean, I reversed fields, but when I was running towards the end zone, it didn't feel like anybody was that close to me. But when I looked at the video, I mean, Hansen and then Nate Starks were right behind me the whole time. I didn't realize they were that close to me, and I just kind of dove in just because I was tired. But yeah, when I got back into the locker room, I just laid down on my back, gassed.
Yeah. The crazy thing, Brandon, I saw your dad and Justin Wynn, and it was a packed house out at Snider. Former quarterback Justin Wynn, your dad played linebacker at Snider. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. I missed the first one. I'm filming the stuff on the sidelines, and I'm like, oh man, I missed the first one. And then, the next series, there he is, number 4, the outfielder again. For you, to have that opportunity, Brandon, to play for Snider like your dad did, to be that safety, to play in those big games and to have those big moments, it's for you as an athlete. I mean, just talk about those moments for you and how special it is to play for Snider and to represent the Panthers like you did Friday night.
Yeah, like you said, my dad went to Snyder, so like when I was growing up, it was just like Snyder, 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 and that's just like me and my parents used to talk about, like we couldn't wait till I get to high school and stuff. The Friday nights are gonna be super fun. And I mean, I remember last year I was telling somebody, they were asking me like if I was excited and stuff. And I was like, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and it's here, and it's been here for about a year now, but we're not done yet. But I love it. I love Coach Shipman. I love the coaching staff. It's really like more just like people that you talk to outside of football and just everyday life too.
Sure. Talk about this game last Friday night. I mean, obviously big time SAC implications. You guys, the ground and pound, and then your 2 pickoffs and touchdowns kind of opened things up for Snider. But it was nip and tuck the whole way. Just talk
Mm-hmm.
about the competition you've seen so far. You guys played Warren Central in the beginning, and a good win there. East Noble. Then you get into SAC play, and you guys are playing against Carroll, and 2 wins over Southside and Concordia early on. But the competition level in the SAC, how it's gotten so much better in the last couple of years, and you've seen that. Just talk about what you're seeing out there as a player.
Yeah, like I feel like every week, every team presents a new challenge. So like a team like East Noble, they run the ball really well, so we have to work on stopping the run. And a team like Carroll that we just played, they're one of the best passing teams in the state. So I feel like seeing those different teams helps us overall, and also that we get to play out of conference games like the Warden Central game when we have to go down to Indy. I feel like that's going to help us later on in the season. So when we're in regionals or semi-state or whatever it is, that's not our first road trip that we've been on. Because the past few years, I mean, we've only been, our furthest game was not even 20 minutes away. So I feel like that's going to help us later on in the season also.
Hey, Brandon, this is Coach Griff, and let's talk a little bit about your decision to play baseball. You've committed to Vanderbilt. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. How was that recruiting experience with Vandy? Because they're a pretty good, darn good baseball team, that's for sure. And I think they're kind of referred to as the Vandy boys. What in all that led you to Vanderbilt?
Yeah. The recruiting for baseball started really early. I got my first offer my freshman year in September. I think it was Louisville. So they were my first offer. Then I was going to a bunch of camps. I was going to Kentucky. Then I was playing in a tournament in Florida, and they see me play down there. And my coach asked me to send him like a list of schools that like I would want to go to, and I sent him a list, and Vanderbilt was one of those schools. Then he got me in touch with Vanderbilt. Then Vanderbilt invited me to like a prospect camp. It was like in November, and I went to that, and I did good there. And a few weeks later, they offered me. Then a couple weeks later, then I committed.
Any possibilities of trying to do both?
No, not right now. No.
Well, I was going to say, I know some people at Vanderbilt football that probably like to have you, because I know Iowa's actually offered you for football. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, they actually offered me like last school year, like in May, but
Uh-huh.
I just never posted it until whenever I did, like August, early August.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What
Yeah.
is your prospects when it comes to baseball in the draft? Or is there any possibilities there that may also have to force you to make a decision?
Yeah, there is a good possibility that that could happen.
What are some of the feedback you're getting there?
Well, I mean, it's also like if it's what I want to do and if it makes sense or not, like
Yeah.
money wise and stuff, and if I do want to go get a education right away.
Mhm. What are you thinking of studying? Because Vanderbilt, I mean, it's one of the top academic schools in the country. And it's, not everybody just walks into Vanderbilt and shows them their grades and stuff. It's a pretty strict academic school. What are you thinking of studying there?
Yeah, some type of like exercise science or like anatomy stuff, so I can get into like kind of like the stuff that PSM does, like the physical training and stuff, because that's kind of what I
Okay.
want to do when I get older.
Well, you're not going to go wrong at Vanderbilt
Yeah.
with whatever you want to study. And I'm sure your heart is set on playing Major League Baseball. Would that be a fair assessment as well?
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome, man.
Brandon,
That's
talk
awesome.
about just real Brandon, talk. You're a multi-sport athlete.
Absolutely.
Basketball you did for a while at Blackhawk Middle School and at Snider, and found success there. You didn't play this past season, but you turned to track a little bit. You were a city champion in track, and now you made it to state with the 4x1 for Snider last year. The dedication of balancing all three of those sports, or four sports: basketball, football, track, baseball, for you, what's that look like as far as how you balance all of that and are so successful about what you're able to do on all different of those courts?
Yeah, my freshman year, like you said, I played football, basketball, and baseball. Then my sophomore year last year, I didn't play basketball. I focused on more like weightlifting and stuff and getting into PSM more because that was my problem my freshman year. I didn't get into like PSM as much as I wanted to and stuff, and I wanted to put on weight. I didn't think basketball would help me with that. Then my sophomore year, I was just like kind of thinking like, I didn't like just want to do baseball all the time. So I asked the track coach if he would be okay with that and stuff. But it was definitely hard. Like I would have to go in to practice in the mornings before school, then just go to baseball practice after school. And there was a lot of days where I definitely did not feel like going to track practice. But the baseball coaches were cool with it and stuff. But it definitely was hard. But I liked it. And this is gonna sound weird, but another reason why I did it is so I could get my mom has her Letterman jacket, and I want to get more pins than she did when she was in high school.
Yeah. And your mom used to be, am I right, the Dwenger softball coach? Am I right on that?
Yeah, she was, but she went to West Lafayette.
Okay.
She's
All
a
right.
Purdue grad or West Lafayette
Yeah,
High School.
yeah. Well, yeah. She went to West Lafayette High School, but she is a Purdue grad also.
Okay, and then she
Okay.
came
Well,
back to the Fort Wayne area and coached at Dwenger. So
Yeah,
that's cool. Well, that's great.
I
Well,
wish you the
Brandon,
best too, because like Doot was saying there, not too many kids out there realize that it's okay to play three sports or be a multi-sport athlete. But if you're not going to be a multi-sport athlete, do something that's going to help you in one sport or the other by getting out and being involved in the weight room and things like that. So
yeah,
that's a big tip of the cap to you for going out and still chasing things that you still love to do. So good for you, man.
all right. Well, Brandon, we appreciate you coming on tonight, spending some time. I know it's been a busy week for you, and I'm sure people have been blowing up your phone and everything from all over and your parents' phones. And I just know that it was a big night on Friday, and to see that was what truly amazing, a great game. And obviously you guys now sit atop the SAC with some games to go. Another big one, Coach, too, Brandon, with Homestead this weekend. We will be out there for the 1380 game of the week yet again. So big SAC implications. And I know that you're looking forward to being a big part of it. And we certainly appreciate you being on with us this week on Upon Further Review.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
All right. That was Brandon Logan, the talented safety from Snider High School, center fielder on the baseball team, played basketball. I think they got the sectional championship his sophomore year. I'm trying to re-rack my brain with that, but then gets to state on the 4x1 as a track athlete. And literally last spring, there were times where we didn't talk about it too much, but Brandon would go play a Snider baseball game in the morning, maybe even a doubleheader, 10 o'clock game, and then beat feet to go over to the Northside Relays and literally change in the car and get there and run a race, or, that's dedication. And that's a multi-sport athlete that is reaping the benefits of what he's sowed, Coach. And as a coach, you love to see a kid like that because he's got so many talents and so many facets to his game that he's got God-given ability that he has been able to mold through hard work. And you can tell he's somebody who really applies his craft and really hones in on the things and continues to improve and develop.
Well, right. And, the one thing that I think that's very important here is mom and dad doing what they can to make sure that he can do multiple sports. Because I'm sure there was a time that mom and dad were rushing him around to, whether it be baseball practice, football practice, as you said, track, or then going out and traveling and trying to, the baseball thing is that can get kind of crazy with all the travel stuff. But there's no question this kid has that it factor. I mean, when I look at him and compare him to where Jesse Bates was, I think Brandon is even a little bit ahead of him and his development as a football player, comparing the two to where they were at the same time, because I think Brandon's a little bit thicker than what Jesse was at the time. But I think he's going to get drafted. I hope he has, I hope it's something that if he wants it, it gets it. And it makes sense for him to do that, but also getting a chance to go to Vanderbilt and play for one of the national programs and get a Vanderbilt education and all the things that go with that.
And and travel baseball is huge for Brandon with Canes Midwest. I know that's who he goes with, but also too, I mean, just think about it. I mean, the idea of committing to an SEC school in baseball before you even take the field as a freshman. It was his 8th grade into freshman year. So, I think part of it is the travel baseball helps you, the multi-sport athlete helps you, the performance aspect, he does PSM, that helps as well. And being part of Snider and the great coaching staff they have there and just the system that they have in place, because, back to the Panthers and all of this, one of the questions was, what is the offense going to be like this year? And they obviously have proved themselves early on, but the defense was always seemed to be, okay, at the very least, ground and pound, and then rely on your defense. And boy, I mean, with Brandon back there, Levi Overhosen back there, you have Lucas Rohrbacher as a linebacker, Will Kelso on the defensive line. You have Ethan playing both ways, and an Army, or I'm sorry, a Navy, no, Air Force. I'm sorry, I'll get the right branch. Committed to Air Force. So you have another primetime Division I player on that defense that's going to play. So really things clicking for the Snider Panthers. And I think last Friday night really showed how far they've come, because I think we all knew Carroll was going to be good, and Carroll is certainly good. There were some questions for Snider, but so far through week 5, they have shown there was not much of any drop off from that team from a year ago that made it to semi-state.
No, and I think defensively speaking, and I think Coach Pittman alluded to this probably when we talked to him back in our summer preview. Defensively, they're not all that big up front, and even in the linebacker position. But what they are is they're quick and they've got speed, and that in itself can be a problem for offenses, as it was for Carroll on Friday night. And you know, um, those type of games, when you get in those type of games, when you got two top-notch teams playing each other, it comes down to who makes the least amount of mistakes. And that's what happened on Friday night. It was, the two interceptions that were, I'm sure if you ask Jimmy Sullivan, he wished he had both of them back in that regard. But Snider overall, they just caused havoc. I mean, Carroll really couldn't muster any type of running game. It was kind of like what they've had experience up to that point, where they were very, you know, limited in what they could run offensively in terms of the running the football. And then Snyder's defense turned it up. But the other thing is Carroll's defense was played lights out, I thought, at times on Friday night. Pasewski and this Cameron Lentz. I mean,
Yeah.
that kid the last 2 weeks, I mean, he's 6'3", 215, and he is a specimen, and he can play. He can run sideline to sideline, north and south, and he's a player. And we've got so many good players in the area. It's unbelievable. And now you understand why you're getting the Big Ten coming in here year in, year out,
Yep.
looking at kids, is because the talent that's on the field is just I mean, there's a lot of it. And it's the scary part of it is some of these kids are just juniors.
Yeah.
So, but it was a great game Friday night. It was a great high school football game. Great crowd. That's one thing that I want to commend is not only the moms and dads and aunts and uncles and all the family members that go to every game for the most part, but the student sections for both
Yeah.
Snider and Carroll turned out. And I'm telling you, that was neat to see. I haven't seen something like that at Spooler for
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
Where
And
you
yeah.
had the atmosphere like it did with the student bodies.
Yeah, and it was great to be there. We certainly appreciate Steve Zimbo, the athletic director there in Fort Wayne Community Schools, for letting us come in and uh, it was what's really amazing about this is we get the new divisions in the SAC, but a game like this, I mean, week 5, this may be for the SAC championship. Obviously, there's still other games to be played because of the way the schedule is set up, and Homestead and Snyder is another big one Friday night and all of that. But I think for us, and I think a lot of it too is I was joking with some people about this. I'm a Snyder grad. I live in the Carroll district now. My kids will go to Carroll. There are several people that I know that are in that same boat. It's amazing how a lot of the black and gold is kind of turned over to blue for a lot of people over the years. I saw a lot of Snyder people in blue because kids and grandkids are playing there, but also too that atmosphere. I think there is a lot of what Snyder has built up over the last 40, 50 years that is rubbing off on Carroll. And it's kind of weird to say, and maybe I'm just getting too prisoner of the moment situation here, but Doug Dinan used to be at Snyder as an assistant coach, and it's just the facilities are great. And when you get a winning product on the team, on the field, I mean, it just changes the whole landscape. And it was not that long ago that Carroll was not a very good team. I have a neighbor who went to Carroll. He said they didn't even charge us to come to the football games on Friday nights. We could walk in if we wanted to just to get fans there. And I think it's a testament to what that program and that school and what Coach Dinan and his staff and all those players, Jimmy Sullivan, Hanson Hafner, Ashton Basetzky, all the way down through the youth program has been able to develop it at Carroll. And it's kind of business as usual for Snyder as well.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think coaching in general in the Northeast Indiana area, regardless of SAC or wherever, is really good. I mean, there's a lot of really good coaches that really teach good technique, sound fundamentals, offense, defense is really sound in what they do. And, we saw that Friday. And again, it comes down to two mistakes that is the end result of that ball game. Because if you really look at it, that game was pretty tight and pretty much in Carroll's favor until Brandon Logan decided to blow the top off of it with those big plays. So
Yeah.
again, just a great, like you said, great atmosphere, great game, hospitality, from the Snider administrative staff and everything there. Very, very helpful. And we're very much appreciative of the fact that, they allow us to come and be a part of it because,
Yeah.
from the setup, the pregame outside the ticket booth there is kind of a neat area to be around.
The crowd was nuts. I mean,
Yeah,
we saw it. They opened at 6:00, and there was a steady line. I mean, the line was back to about, if you kind of eyeballed it, back to the 50-yard line from the south end zone gate. So, a really great crowd and really good times. And for both teams, still a lot to play for. Carroll may have lost this game, but it was a 3-point game. Special teams became part of it because Snider had to kick some field goals to win this game. We talked about that on the pregame show. So, and going forward, both teams have a lot to play for because, everybody except Snider and Lures are the two only undefeated teams in the SAC. So
Right.
everybody's going to be rooting for whoever's playing Carroll and whoever playing Lures, because you get that one loss and suddenly you've got a 5 or 6-way tie that has to be sorted out by a head-to-head. But it should be interesting.
Yeah, you look at Homestead right now,
Yeah.
and they control their destiny. Snider,
That's true.
I mean, Snider controls their destiny more than anyone, but, they have to play Homestead, which Homestead, they can get by them and get by Carroll. It throws a big old water balloon in the
And
middle of
that 1
everything.
point game, Dwenger and Homestead 1 point. And Dwenger was one of those teams that we thought were struggling. They go and beat Homestead at home. They've got the 1 loss. Homestead's got the 1 loss. Carroll now has the 1 loss. And Northside has got the 1 loss too. So all of a sudden, Northside is kind of back in the playoff and the championship picture just by virtue of the other teams beating up on each other within the division. And my understanding, like I said, it's a rabbit hole to go down, is that in the concept of the way they split up the SEC, there was never really the idea of splitting into divisions and having division champions, which you're not going to do, but it kind of bore out that way. So it's ultimately the overall SAC champion is based on the 7 conference game record. And then if they need to sort it out with head to head, they can. But there is still that idea that you can have multiple champions from different divisions, quote unquote. So we could see a potential for Snider and Lures both running the table in the SAC, their respect. Now, not having the schedules in front of me, I mean, it's still, Snider has to play Homestead and Dwenger and Northrop.
Lures has Dwenger. I mean,
Lures has the Battle of the Bishops still and stuff.
Right,
so I
and
mean,
Homestead.
Those aren't guaranteed wins for everybody. And I think Lures and Northside still have to play. So still a lot of football to be played. And I think the benefit of this new conference situation is that here we are at week 5 and half of the league isn't sitting there saying, well, we don't have anything to play for until sectionals now, because realistically, there's a lot to be played for because of the way the breakdown is.
Well, you've got about 6 teams within the earshot of being at the top of the heap if some things go the way they go. And look, Snider's going to face some adversity here wherever it may come. They faced a little bit of that on Friday night. They overcame it. Doesn't mean they won't face it again, and they're going to have to come back from that. They've got the talent. It's a well-rounded team. They could do a lot as we look forward in terms of the tournament and things of that nature, just as Carroll could. It's going to be a lot of fun here as we push towards the end of the year, because we're beyond that halfway point now, and now we're going to start seeing these type of games because everybody's at their A game now. It's not going to you're not filling around to see who you are or what you are. And like I say, Carroll can still be a dangerous team if they can figure out and get better at trying to run the football, whatever that may be. And Coach Dinan and his crew are going to do it. They're going to figure it out because they're just too good of coaches. They all of a sudden become a team that also becomes a prolific challenge for not only teams in the conference, where irregardless of what happens, but even as it goes into the tournament. So I think we better look at next week, because we're going to have another round of great games as we look to week 6 in the Summit Athletic Conference. We've already talked about us being out at Homestead for the Snider Homestead matchup on Friday night. And, again, Homestead has played Snider tough for the last couple of years. That could be an interesting ball game, especially with Snider coming off such a big victory when you think about it. And then you've got Dwenger at Northrop. Of course, Lures and Northside, which I think will be another dandy of a game, because you got two teams now, dude, that are coming into that game full of confidence, right? Lures got over the hump. They found themselves, and now they've got themselves on a roll. And Northside has done that as well with getting Tay Johnson back, and now him being at quarterback. I mean, you just adds a totally different dimension to that football team heading into that matchup this Friday night against Lures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and realistically, there again with the divisional breakdown, so to speak, or the idea of outside of the Wayne and Carroll game, everybody's playing somebody in their division or their pod, or the big schools and the small schools. But Lures Northside. I mean, a game where Lures is undefeated in the conference after a tough non-conference start. Northside had a tough non-conference start, and then even week 1 of the SAC slate, which was week 3, losing to Bishop Dwenger. Now these teams are going, and there are no divisional champions here, but they're again, like, if you can keep the roll going, because Lures has won 3 in a row, Northside has won 3 in a row, and Snider at 5 in a row too. So those are the winning streaks in the SAC. And so when you start putting that together, and Northside's one of those teams where, because of Tay Johnson, because of guys like Jordan King, because of Jamari Pearson's ability, and like, that is a dangerous team every time out. And
absolutely,
they just, the Tay Johnson playing quarterback thing is just so wild to me, because it's like, it makes sense, but then it's like, man, they really do it. Like we talked about in the offseason when he committed to Notre Dame. Well, I wonder how much offense he's going to play now, because how much that Notre Dame influence may have, and they're putting him out there even more now, throwing the ball around 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, and it's crazy. But he's a fantastic player, and there again, he makes everybody around him better, because, oh, by the way, Northside's been able to get their run game started now.
Well, it just makes it harder to defend.
And it makes them harder to defend. And that's what was really lacking early on for the Legends. And especially coming from Jonte Lambert, who graduated, who was led the SAC in rushing. And then he graduates, and then you can't even get, for the first 3 games, barely touched 200 yards total. So now they've been able to find a little bit of a running game. They've figured out the quarterback scenario, because Bodie Dickerson also graduated, and now they go ultimately with Tay Johnson. So it's just one of those things where keeping him healthy, keeping him up, and letting him do his thing. And I think that will bode well for the Northside Legends as well. The other games, Southside and Concordia, 2 teams that have not won all year. Lots, no wins between the two. They've given up lots of points. In fact, Concordia 246 points. They've given up. Southside 229. So Concordia's even given up more scoring wise. Now, Concordia can move the ball, get lots of yardage. They've been able to score. Their defense struggles to stop anybody, so that's been their Achilles heel. I think it's probably a better matchup for them, obviously, this week against Southside. But for both of these teams, I feel like there's probably some belief there that it's a winnable game because Southside started off week 1 at Marion, had a chance to win that game, let it slip through their fingers, have not been even anywhere close to it since.
Right.
But this is a time where realistically, in your mind, looking on paper, I would think at least Southside feels they have a chance to win on Friday.
Well, they both do. And you're going to, that will actually probably be a pretty good ball game, or has the ability to be a pretty good ball game, because they're playing for the first win. And, you're most likely going to get the best shots out of both teams. But, you know, um, it's good to see that type of game. I know those two teams are, I mean, it's hard. I've always said this: winning is hard. Losing's very simple. you know, you can lose very easily. Winning, on the other hand, is difficult. And just getting beyond that first win is the hurdle that everyone tries to get beyond, because that's usually the toughest one. But that one should be a pretty good game. And then you look over at the NE8 this week. Um, you got Columbia City at New Haven, which is going to be another, barn burner for control of the NE8. Other than that, you got Belmont at Leo, DeKalb at Huntington North, which should be a pretty decent ball game. I don't know the health situation of, DeKalb as we speak. And then East Noble heads down to Norwell, and that's never been a friendly confines for East Noble to go to, because I believe that may be their furthest game
Yeah.
from a travel standpoint. So all eyes will be in New Haven come Friday night to watch that ball game, and that's going to be a dandy of a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of the murderer's row, so to speak, part of schedule that the NE8 teams have to go through when you
Right.
have East Noble, when you have Leo on your schedule, New Haven, Columbia City, and Norwell. You always throw Norwell in there because frankly,
Yeah.
last couple of years they've been that team. Not the same Norwell we've come accustomed to, but still one of those teams where if they can get it going on the Friday night, they're tough. For them, it's always been their defense as well. So it's slowing you down a little bit too. But I mean, those are some exciting games. The Columbus City, New Haven, DeKalb, Huntington North, because that conference. So you got Columbia City and New Haven, both undefeated, 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to lose their first game, and so is it going to come down to an overtime thriller? Because both teams are scoring a lot there too with Columbia City and New Haven. Columbia City, we mentioned 48.8 points per game. New Haven 41.8. So this has a potential to see a high scoring affair. We saw James Hardy the fourth get 2 touchdowns on Friday night. He's been playing big on defense. It's nice to see him kind of get in the offensive fold of things. But Donovan Williams, another big game.
Yep.
Mylan Graham, of course. And for Columbia City, Stratton Fuller, who we talked to earlier in the show, they've got a good quarterback. Their running game, there's like a 3-headed monster there with Schroff and Getz, and they just get it done. And that's what you want, especially middle part of your season as the schedule tightens up and toughens up. You want your guys locked and loaded, ready to go, and know that you can rely on points and defense from different places on the field.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to see each other again on Friday night at 6:00 out at Homestead, as we will have the 1380 game of the week, the Snider Panthers versus the Homestead Spartans. Doot, Jim Shevlin, and myself will be on at 6:00. We'll get you all started up for all the Friday night games, not only in the Summit Athletic Conference, but in and around the area. Then I'll join Brett Rump in the booth to call the Snider Homestead game. And then, of course, after the game, you can catch Brett and Adam Lundy at the Coventry Pizza Hut for the Indiana Physical Therapy post-game show, where they'll recap all the Friday night's action for everyone. Come join him out there at Pizza Hut. I know they enjoyed the crowd. They had another nice turnout at the Pine Valley one when I dropped off the equipment on Saturday. But if you could, again, like I said, please subscribe on YouTube. Give us a little follow there, as well as a notification bell. And then, of course, you can catch us on Twitter and Facebook, as well as all the podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Thanks to our guest tonight, Stratton Fuller, the wide receiver from Columbia City, and Brandon Logan, the safety from Snider High School, with 2 thrilling interceptions that really sealed the deal for Snider's 27-24 victory over the Carroll Chargers. Dude, it's been a great pleasure, my man, but it's time to get this thing off and let us all recoup and get ready for Friday night. So for my man, Mr. Eric Dutkiewecz, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.